Hey Professor, so this is my chat solution for homework 3 of Distributed Systems, winter quarter 2018. So what I've done here is I have my client code on the right and I have my server code on the left, and I'm just going to run you through how it works. So first I've got in my server, starting with my server, I've got my imports of socket sys and threading, and then what I do is I go into my client, I create an array for my client names and my client sockets. And then I also create a messaging format, which was a clever thing I found from one of the other students in class that they were doing, that makes it so that the message in the chat room will be formatted in a way that's appealing. Like I like that it'll have like the name in the front and then it'll have the message second. So I thought I would do that too. All right, so then what I do is I define my first function, which is chat. And so in chat, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be creating a name variable that will get the name by decoding it from the received input um, from the user. And then what it's going to do is we're going to do client. We're going to append the client name to the client names array, the name, and then we're going to append the socket so that we have like the name of the specific person who is in the chat now, and then we also have the address and their socket, their like socket address. So then what we'll do is we'll create the message by doing our on line 13 message equals s dot receive 1024, and then while the message is not null, the message will equal so we can set the message equal to the message format where we put the name in the front and the message dot decode second. So that what that'll do is that'll make it into the message format that I defined on line 7, and so it'll come out really nice and clean. And then what it'll do is for each socket in the client sockets, if the socket does not equal s, it does not equal the original socket. So every socket except for itself, it will send the message, and then basically what that's going to do is that's for all of the people who are in the chat room. We want to be able to send the message to all of them, but we don't want to send this to the server, which is the s variable is the server socket. So we're not going to send this to the server. We're going to send this to all of the people in the chat room besides the server. So then what we'll do is we'll get the next message, and it'll just continue in the loop until we have until they enter nothing as input. And then what we'll do is we will try to shut down the socket, and then we will accept an error just in case it can't shut down. And then the next thing we'll do is we'll go to client names and we'll remove the client because they input nothing, and then we'll remove their name and their socket, and then that'll be how we handle the chat function. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down and I'll explain how the main function works. Just give me a moment. Okay, so now I've got my main function, and so let me tell you all about my main function. So what it does is, first what we do is we try to get the port number, because sometimes that might have an index error, a type error, and then if it does, we quit the program, but we get the port number, and then what we do is we create a socket, and then with that socket, we can set sock op so that we can set the options for that socket. We can then bind that socket to listen for connections from using that port that we created, and then we can listen for any connections, and while true, so we're just going to create an infinite while loop here until our program is over, and then we're going to try to to accept the socket using socket.accept and set the variable sock and addr addr equal to socket.accept. Then we have chatter equals threading.thread equals chat arg socket. So what that'll do is that will set up the thread to talk to the socket with the chatter, and then chatter.daemon equals true, which means that we won't explicitly join, and then the chatter.start will begin the chat for the client, and then we'll accept a keyboard interrupt in case that you want to exit, so then the server is shutting down the program. And then for each client socket in the client sockets, we will shut down the socket, close the socket, and close the listener. and then we will close the server socket and system.exit, ending the program. And so that's how my server socket works. And so yeah. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you all about my client, my chat client. And so my chat client, it's we define a receive method, and so the receive method takes this as the socket, and it tries to get the message, and message equals socket.receive, and then while the message is not null, we're going to print it and decode it, and then get the next message after that, and then if we get an error, we're just going to pass an os.exit, and then so that's how the receive works. And then what we're going to do for the main method here is we're going to get the port number, and then we're going to, if we don't get a port number, if we have an error, we exit the program. Otherwise, we create a socket S, and then we connect the socket to our port that we created. And I use localhost so I could run it on my computer really easily. And then so receiver equals threading.thread, and then target receive and args s. That basically just sets up the thread. Then we've got the name equals system.stdin.readline, which is first message. That's just the first message that is the name. And then what we do is we send that name, and then the receiver.start will start the receiver thread. Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna read line using sys.stdin read line, and we're gonna save that to the message. And then while the message is not null, we will send the message and then continue sending messages until the user enters a null value or a keyboard exit, and then after that we can shut down the socket and close the program. So that's how my chat and client work. As you can see in my client there, what I have is I have the shutdown and the close method. I was having some trouble with the time frame exit issue that everyone's been having lately, but I hope that this will work when you test it, because I did struggle just a little bit with the testing, but I tried again and again. So anyway, that's my program. Thanks.